Hello everyone and welcome to my ABCGH Spoilers channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The tension in Port Charles had been growing for months. Ever since Sam's sad death created an emptiness that no one could fill. Scout, the young girl with her mother's brilliant eyes and adventurous personality, became the epicenter of a storm that pitted brother against brother. Cain, formerly seen as the more stable Quartermaine twin, had changed into something darker and more domineering. He clutched to Scout as if she were the last piece of Sam he could keep. Yet his actions indicated possession rather than protection. He imposed stringent rules, cut her off from much of her extended family, and forced her to live apart from her half-brother, Danny. Danny, Jason Morgan's son with Sam, was thought too similar to his father, too connected to the hazardous world Jason inhabited for Drew to allow any contact. Drew used restraining orders, threats of legal action, and icy ultimatums to enforce his own form of guardianship. Jason observed from the shadows at first his need to protect his children clashing with the fragile calm he had attempted to preserve since coming to town. He knew Drew's anguish had twisted him, but he also witnessed the damage it had done to Scout and Danny. The siblings sorely missed each other. Danny, now a teen seeking his own identity, sneaked moments with Scout whenever he could, disregarding Drew's regulations. Scout, young but smart, inquired endlessly about her brother, including why he couldn't come to the park or share ice cream like before. Each rejection eroded her innocence, and Jason felt it like a dagger. The tipping moment occurred gently, nearly unnoticed at first. Drew began having peculiar symptoms, including dizziness, nausea, and a metallic taste in his mouth that persisted regardless of what he ate or drank. He dismissed it as stress, the result of his congressional ambitions colliding with family issues. But the episodes got worse. One night, following a furious disagreement with Alexis about visitation rights, he fainted in his living room, clutching his stomach. Paramedics took him to General Hospital where tests indicated the presence of a slow-acting poison. Poison. Someone had been injecting him purposefully, systematically for weeks. The news spread like wildfire in Port Charles. Whispers in the hallways of GH. Panic calls between family members and the inevitable mistrust of those closest to Drew. Willow, his arranged wife, had a motive. Her own life was upended by his decisions. Alexis, who was fighting for Scout's access to her grandma and brother, had reasons to want him out of the picture. Even Jason's name came up in whispers, but few expected him to resort to poison when a more open confrontation would have been more appropriate. But Jason knew better. He'd seen poison employed before in his line of business, subtle and undetectable. This felt personal, as if it was intended to weaken Drew without murdering him outright, either by forcing him into weakness or gradually punishing him. Jason did not wait for the police inquiry. He operated in the same manner he always had, silently and effectively, relying on old contacts and instincts honed over years in the shadows. He began with the obvious question. Who had access to Drew's food, drinks, and home? The Quartermaine estate was a rolling door of workers, family, and visitors, but Drew had become paranoid, limiting who might approach him. Jason shadowed the routines, seeing the deliveries and intimate times. He discovered that a new attendant, hired surreptitiously after Drew returned from a previous vacation, was handling many of his daily needs. The aide's references appeared to be valid at first glance, but Jason looked deeper. Drew made a link with an old nemesis, someone from his past who had waited years for vengeance. The poison matched a unique substance associated with that grudge, one that resembled natural disease, until it was too late. Confrontation occurred on a wet night outside a drab warehouse on the outskirts of town. When Jason appeared, the aide, who had no longer been hiding under a phony name, attempted to run. But Jason was faster and stronger, motivated by the need to eliminate the threat to his family. There was no dramatic shootout and no extended lecture. Jason quickly disarmed the man, pinning him against the wall and demanding answers. The poisoner confessed swiftly, bitterness pouring out. Drew had harmed him years ago in a failed deal, a betrayal that cost lives. The gradual poison was designed to make Drew suffer as he had. Seeing his world fall piece by piece, Scout would be left fatherless. But the poisoner regarded this as incidental damage. Jason pondered his options in few seconds. Allowing the man to go included risk. He may flee, regroup, and strike again. Turning him over to the police would bring everything into the light. Show flaws and prolong the custody battles. Jason chose the course that he was most familiar with. He eradicated the threat permanently and completely, leaving no trace that could trail back to him or his family. The body slipped into the harbor's depths, adding to the town's long list of unsolved disappearances. Drew's health quickly improved after the poisoner was removed. The doctors astonished at his recovery, which they attributed to aggressive treatment and rest. But Drew felt something had changed. The cloud in his mind cleared. The relentless ache subsided, and with it came a dawning knowledge of how far he had fallen. He glanced at Scout, truly looked at her and saw the sadness in her eyes, the way she clutched at any mention of Danny or Alexis. Guilt set in hard and strange. He thought he was shielding her from Jason's world. But he had become the threat himself, isolating her, dominating her, and allowing his vendetta to blind him to her requirements. Jason did not gloat. He did not need to. When Drew approached him, hesitant and humble, Jason listened. Drew recognized his faults and how sadness and rage had changed him. He mentioned Sam's will and how she had trusted him with the children, but he had broken that trust. The custody arrangements, which were once unquestionably in his favor, suddenly felt terrible. Scout wanted her brother, her grandma, and the entire warmth of her family, which she had lost when Sam died. Danny needed his sister, the only person who matched his mother's brightness and stubbornness. Negotiations started softly. Lawyers were involved, but the important decisions took place in living rooms and coffee shops rather than courtrooms. Drew agreed to lift the restraining order against Danny. He initially allowed monitored visits followed by unsupervised visits. Scout's face brightened up the first time Danny entered the Quartermaines estate freely with no stealth or dread. They played games, laughed, and told stories about their mother. Jason stared from the doorway, his heartbeat slowing for the first time in months. Full custody did not arrive overnight. Drew initially served as Scout's primary guardian, but shared arrangements were made. Jason obtained valuable advice, particularly for Danny, and the siblings were given regular time together. Alexis reclaimed her role as grandma, organizing family dinners where Scout and Danny could run freely in the garden. The Quartermaines, as broken as ever, found a tenuous union in their children's best interests. Jason did not declare victory. He just assumed the role he had always been prepared for. Father, protector, and the constant presence his children required. He spent his evenings assisting Danny with his homework, listening to his teenage problems, and offering gentle, non-judgmental guidance. With Scout, he was softer, reading books, pushing her on the swing, and allowing her to talk about school and dreams. The poison scheme receded into the background, and a grim chapter ended. Drew, now physically and emotionally recovered, began to mend the bridges he had burned. He and Jason even had a rare moment of empathy as two brothers who had lost too much to continue fighting. Life in Port Charles progressed. The youngsters thrived, their laughter filling the hallways of the mansion and the streets of town. Jason stepped taller, the burden of doubt removed. Scout and Danny became closer, their friendship unshakable despite the difficulties. In the quiet moments, Jason reflected on how close they had come to losing everything. Not poison, but the poison of bitterness and control. He had eliminated one menace, but the bigger win was choosing family above vengeance, regaining custody not through force, but through gradual, steady healing. The days became weeks and then months. Scout started school with Danny around to accompany her on difficult days. Jason brought them to the pier and taught them to skip stones across the water while telling them stories about Sam that made them laugh and cry in equal measure. Drew initially watched from a distance before joining in, and the four of them, 2 brothers and 2 children, found a new beat. The poisoner was forgotten, and the spirit was laid to rest. What remained was the family, bruised but entire, ready to face whatever occurred next in the unpredictable world of Port Charles. Jason did not sleep the night the truth was revealed. The penthouse was still safe for a faint buzz from the city beyond the windows, a reminder that Port Charles never truly rested. Even when its most dangerous secrets were revealed, he stood in the darkness, palms braced on the chilly glass, repeating every aspect of the previous 48 hours. Drew collapsed. The hospital sets off alarms. The poison that nearly killed a person and the name, which had emerged like a corpse from deep water. The poisoner didn't act alone. They never did. Jason learned the first rule the hard way. By daybreak, Jason had already moved. He left the penthouse before the sun rose over the bay, donning a jacket he hadn't worn in months, one that held memories of previous conflicts. As he descended the stairs, his burner phone chimed. One message, one place, no names, there are no questions. That was how things worked. When the truth was finally ready to be revealed, the warehouse sat on the dock's edge, forgotten by developers and tourists alike. Jason recalls it being a hub for shipments that never made the manifest. Today was peaceful, too quiet. He parked 2 streets away and came on foot. Senses keen breathing measured. He did not carry anger with him. Anger produced blunders. He possessed resolve. Inside the atmosphere felt moist and metallic. A single light bulb glowed above a metal chair, and bound to it, eyes darting in terror, was a guy Jason recognized instantly. Cyrus Renault's previous runner, not the mastermind, the courier. Jason walked forwards, his boots echoing. The man flinched. I've already told the cops everything, the runner said. I don't know who poisoned him. I swear. Jason came to a halt, just out of reach. You know who paid you, he stated gently. And you know who mixed the poison? The runner swallowed. Sweat beat on his temples. It was not intended to murder him. Just get him sick. Delay him. Jason repeated. That's what she said. The runner nodded excitedly. She wanted Drew out of the way. Long enough to lose the case. Long enough to lose everything. Jason's jaw stiffened. Name? The runner paused, looking to the shadows. Jason did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply waited. Selena Wu, the man muttered. But she did not want the credit. She hired someone else. A nurse. Fake credentials. I've never met her in person. Jason exhaled gently. Selena. This made sense. Drew had crossed too many lines and endangered too many activities. But Jason also understood something else. Selena never acted unless there was leverage. Unless somebody had shoved her. So, who pushed her? Jason asked. The runner shook his head, his eyes welling up with tears. I do not know. I swore. But the nurse remains in town. She was supposed to disappear tonight, Jason said, nodding once. That's all he needed. He exited the warehouse as the sun rose, sending long shadows across the docks. Jason was already 3 steps ahead when he discovered the runner, who was alive, but shaken. The nurse attempted to flee. She was quick, desperate, and more intelligent than most. But she was not smarter than Jason. He intercepted her near the bus terminal, barring her way with calm inevitability. She froze when she saw him, recognition flashing in her eyes. You're too late, she retorted. The money has already been wired. Jason remained motionless. You poisoned Drew. Her lips quiver. I did what I was paid to do. Jason leaned in close enough for her to hear. Him over the traffic. You are going to tell the truth. Contact the police to the courtroom and you're going to tell them who ordered it. Her chuckle was brittle and cracked. Do you think I'm terrified of prison? No, Jason replied. You're scared of the people who paid you. Her laughing ended. Jason straightened. So am I. But not for the same reason. An hour later, the nurse was taken into custody, singing like a choir. Selena Wu's name, the middleman. Offshore accounts. One last detail that made Jason's blood run cold. The first request did not originate from Selena. It had come from Drew himself. Jason stood outside the PCPD interrogation rooms, listening through the glass while the nurse recounted the events. Drew sought an excuse, a medical emergency, something tragic enough to elicit pity, delay proceedings, and frame his opponents. However, the poison dosage had been misjudged. Someone had panicked. Drew had almost paid with his life. Jason felt something break within him. Not wrath, but clarity. Jason was present when Drew was released from the hospital while still under guard, waiting. Drew's eyes widened as Jason entered the room and closed the door behind him. "You did this," Jason stated plainly. Drew attempted to smile. "I don't know what you think." You hired Selena." Jason said, "You ordered the poison. You lost control." Drew's smile faded. "You can't prove that." Jason leaned in closer. "The nurse can bank transfers can be made, and Selena will not defend you." Drew's face lost its color. "You wouldn't turn me in," he answered hesitantly. "Think of Scout." "About Danny." Jason's tone sharpened. "That's exactly what I'm thinking about." Drew reached out, desperation bursting through the arrogance. "Jason, please. I was attempting to protect them from Sonny. From the mess." Jason took a step back. "You put them in danger." That was the end of it. The arrest occurred quietly. There are no cameras, no dramatic per walk, just handcuffs and punishments. Port Charles was buzzing within hours. The poisoner is exposed. The scheme unraveled. Drew Cain, once lauded as a hero, is now shown to be the architect of his own demise. For Scout, the world shifted. She sat in the Quartermaines living room, legs tucked beneath her, and stared at nothing. Danny sat alongside her, shoulders set, attempting to be strong in a way that only children with too much history learned early. Jason stood by the hearth, unsure how to bridge the divide between reality and comfort. Monica entered quietly, her presence a balm. "They're asking questions," she explained gently, "about custody." Jason nodded. Scout eventually looked up, saying, "I'm ready." "Is my father going to jail?" Jason did not lie. "Yes." Tears welled up, but she did not cry. "Did he truly intend to hurt someone?" "Yes," Jason replied. Danny clenched his fists, and he hurt a lot of people by doing it. Jason knelt in front of him. "He always said he was the good guy. People can believe they're doing the right thing and still be wrong." Scout's voice was hardly heard. "What will happen to us?" Jason inhaled a breath he had not aware he was holding. "If you want, you can stay with me." The silence stretched. Then Danny nodded. Scout hesitated, searching Jason's face for something she had misplaced. "You're not going to disappear?" she asked. Jason met her gaze. "I'm not going anywhere." The custody hearing was brief, nasty, and conclusive. With Drew's sins exposed, the judge had little sympathy for argument. The nurse testified. The evidence had spoken. Drew looked from behind his attorney, hollow-eyed as the gavel dropped. "Custody of Scout Cain and Danny Morgan is awarded to Jason Morgan," the judge stated firmly. Effective immediately, the words rang. Jason did not rejoice. He did not smile. He only turned to see Scout and Danny standing together, a weak unit bracing for impact. He approached them, placing a steady hand on each shoulder. "We'll figure this out," he replied. The sun shone brightly outside the courthouse. Reporters screamed questions. Jason sheltered the children and guided them to the car. Scout reached for his hand as he closed the door. That night, the penthouse seemed unique. Scout initially claimed the couch and refused the guest room. Danny perused the shelves, his curiosity covering his dread. Jason ordered pizza because it was typical and normal matters. They ate in silence until Danny splashed cola over Jason, who didn't even flinch. Later, Jason stood on the balcony. The city lights reflected in the glass. Scout spoke gently behind him. Jason. He turned. Yeah. Thank you for telling the truth, he replied. Even when it hurt. Jason nodded. It always does. She paused. Will my father despise you? Jason considered the question. Maybe, but that is not your weight to bear. Scout approached him, leaning in just enough to feel safe. Jason laid his hand on her shoulder, grounding both of them. Poor Charles carried on as it always did. But inside the penthouse, something had changed. The poison was gone. The lies were exposed. For the first time in a long time, Jason felt like he could defend the future, which was unpredictable, delicate, and real. Not with violence, but with the truth. Morning arrived slowly, filtered through half-drawn curtains and the unexpected noises of children moving around the apartment. Jason awoke before his alarm, his instinct sharper than ever, but instead of danger, he heard Danny laughing. It halted him in his tracks. Danny rummaged through cabinets in the kitchen while standing on a chair. Scout sat at the counter, swinging her legs and observing him with weary delight. We're hungry, Danny said unapologetic. And there's no cereal. Jason almost smiled. Almost. He took out eggs, toast, and whatever he could find. Cooking was not his strong suit. But effort was important. Scout watched intently as he cracked eggs, one shell tumbling into the pan. You're bad at this, she stated bluntly. I know, Jason said. But I'm consistent. This elicited a small, fleeting, but genuine smile from her. As they ate, the weight of everything unsaid lingered. Drew's arrest. The trial would follow. The questions their classmates would pose at school. Jason did not pretend that it would be easy. There are rules, he explained carefully. Not because I distrust you. Because I need to keep you safe. Danny nodded quickly. Scout hesitated and then nodded. Monica later came by bringing clothes, books, and a quiet strength that helped to calm the room. She hugged the children tightly, whispering reassurances that only a grandmother could provide. When she pulled Jason aside, her eyes were misty. You did the right thing, she assured him, even if it means losing your peace. Jason returned his gaze to Scout and Danny, who were now arguing about a video game. This is peace, he stated. That afternoon, Jason made a call he'd been avoiding for years about schools, counselors, and routines. Creating a life rather than surviving one. Each step felt unfamiliar but necessary. That night, as Scout and Danny slept in different rooms for the first time, Jason stood in the hallway, listening to their steady breathing. The world outside remained dangerous. Enemies still exist. But within these walls, Jason made a silent vow. No more secrets, no more poison, just protection, honesty, and the opportunity for them to grow up safer than he.